TAP send. Oh, I was but maybe you're from Calabos. The only boss. With oneness. Baby, I will be everywhere I day and everywhere they go. TAP send got me covered. If you need to send money or transfer money from Europe, from Canada, from USA, from UK, any part in Europe, you can send it through TAP send. And guess what? Oceania, they will receive it right here in Ghana and many countries across Africa. So what are you waiting for? Download TAP send now on Google Play Store or App Store. When you download, it's so easy to use. Tell your families, tell your loved ones to download TAP send. Okay? But also, when I receive my money, that's how the world is chilling. Like my view, hey, you crazy.
Download TAP send now on Google Play and App Store. TAP send. It's secure, convenient, easy, and fast.
Welcome to the epitome of luxury living, White Wall Properties. We are a Ghanaian-owned real estate company that develops comfortable apartments and townhouses for residential and investment purposes. At White Wall Properties, our vision is clear: to be Ghana's preferred real estate developer. We are driven by a passion to deliver consistent quality in our product and customer service. Our commitment to excellence is unwavering, and our team's dedication to providing an outstanding experience sets us apart. For over a decade, White Wall has been at the forefront of Ghana's real estate industry, creating spaces that are not only comfortable, functional and located in the heart of Accra, but also stylish and luxurious. Each of our prestigious developments reflects our core values of quality, reliability and customer satisfaction. Choosing White Wall Properties is choosing a partner who understands your needs and exceeds your expectations. We are proud to contribute to Ghana's real estate landscape, offering homes and investment opportunities that are second to none. We invite you to explore our project and discover the White Wall difference. Contact us today to learn more about our development and how we can help you find your perfect home. Visit whitewallproperties.com or call us. White Wall Properties. Discover true comfort.
Hello, and welcome to today's show. Today, my name is Dr. Akos, and I will be your host and your guest. Actually, Lady Abene is on her way. She's just been held up at work. So in the meantime, I'm going to be holding the fort and doing both at the same time. So welcome to everybody who's here today. We really appreciate you for being here, and we're happy to see you. Right, let's get straight into it because I'm by myself today. So, today we're going to talk about African foods to avoid and basically why you should avoid them. We've already spoken about this several times in bits. We've not really put it together. We've spoken about little bits in on some parts of the show. We've done a nutrition show, we've done a heart show, and we've mentioned a few of them. But today I'm putting it all together, my top 7 that I feel you should avoid, and I'll tell you why you should avoid them. And then we'll have a quick question and answer session at the end, like we usually do. And again, you can ask any question. It doesn't have to relate to just today's topic, but of course you can ask about what we've spoken about today, or any health question that you have that you'd like a doctor, a real life doctor, to answer for you. So we'll start off. And I'm going to share my screen if I can. Host, can I please share my screen? I think I can. Okay, there we go. Fine. Right, so Oh, and actually, you know what? Because I'm usually not the host, I'm not very good at this, actually. I'd also like to thank OT Media and TAPTAP, send our sponsors who help make this show a reality. So thank you for making this show a reality. And also our faithful watchers who tune in every Wednesday on time. Some people don't come on time, so I'm sure they'll join later, but who always tune in and come and join us as we have this show. So yeah, okay. Right. Bear with me as I share my screen, or try to share my screen. Okay, fantastic. So I think I'm sharing my screen now. So I'm going to go through the 7 top, and I call them African foods because you can mostly find them in Africa, or Africans are the ones who tend to eat it most of the time. However, having said that, it doesn't mean that it's only Africans who eat these foods. There are other people who eat them, and we'll come to another bit about different types of food. So shito is the first one is shito, which is mainly from Ghana. And again, we've had this conversation on this show before where we've spoken about why shito. Why should, and this is actually the reason, because I think it's come up a lot of the time, and Dr. Mustafa said he was going to come and talk about it, and delve a little bit deeper into why shito should not be consumed, at least not frequently. So I'm going to tell you why. Shito is a popular Ghanaian condiment, which is made from ingredients like dried fish, shrimp, hot peppers, and oil. The health concerns are basically associated with shito are primarily 2 main things, really. It's the reuse of oil or overheated oil. So if you know how to make shito, which I suspect a lot of you here will know how to make it, it's a lot of oil, and you have to heat it to very high heat. And so, a lot of the time, or sometimes what I've heard is people don't tend to use fresh oil. A lot of the time it tends to be sort of oil that you've used for something and then you reuse that oil. Or again, oil in itself has some bonds in it, which can be healthy. But at the same time, if you overheat oil, then it can actually damage those bonds, which can then make oil unhealthy. So that is the first thing about shito that we need to be careful of. And the second thing is the improper storage of shito. So storing shito at room temperature for an extended period of time can actually promote the growth of bacteria and molds, especially if not sealed properly. Again, if you think about shito, there's sometimes, when we say improper use, there are people who sort of would go into the shito, put it on their plate, go back into the shito. Some people even taste it, put it back in it. So there's cross-contamination. Sometimes even using wet spoons. So I know some people rinse their spoon, pop it in the shito. Again, with that wetness being introduced into the shito, and then the shito being stored, not being stored properly, as being stored at room temperature, that can contribute to sort of the growth of bacteria and fungi. And that can, in a sense, if you're keeping it for a very long time, you can actually end up eating fungus. So again, these are some of the concerns that we have about shito. If you do want to use shito, what I would recommend is use fresh oil during preparation. Okay, so don't reuse oil. Try to use fresh oil to make it really fresh. And also keep it in sort of clean, dry containers. Refrigerate it to prolong the shelf life and reduce contamination. And every time there's nothing wrong with sort of using the same spoon for shito, but try not to sort of cross-contaminate it, put it in your mouth, or, wetten the spoon before. Even if you wash the spoon before, make sure it's dry before you introduce it into the shito. So these are some of the things that we need to look out for. The second food is smoked or charred meats and fish. Now, everybody loves a barbecue, so this is not just about African food. But I know, for example, there's a Kenyan dish that I really, really like, nyama choma, and essentially is just charred meat, and it's so nice. However, the traditional smoking methods for meats and fish can introduce health hazards. So again, the kind of things that we're looking at are formation of something called PAH. PAH. So smoking over open flames or burning wood can produce PAH, which are known to be carcinogens. So carcinogens are just cancer-causing agents. So regular consumption of these known cancer-causing agents, of these heavily smoked or charred foods, has been linked to an increased risk of certain cancers because of the carcinogens in the foods. So again, if you do want to eat these foods, what I would recommend is opt for meats and fish that are smoked using controlled methods and avoid consuming heavily charred portions. So what I mean by heavily charred portions, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but I'm pointing to this black bit of this meat. So again, when you have a barbecue or whenever you're smoking meat, some parts of the meat can get really burnt or really charred. And these are the bits you want to avoid because these are the bits that will have the cancer formulated. It's basically like eating charcoal, really, if you think about it. So you just want to avoid those bits. And again, if you can, don't eat them regularly. I mean, once in a while, fine. But if you're eating them all the time, you've just got to be a little bit careful about that. The third one, I like this one because I've heard about this so many times from my mom. She always used to say aflatoxin. I was like, what is she talking about? I don't even, understand what this aflatoxin means. But aflatoxins are basically toxic compounds produced by certain molds, so like fungus, notably one called Aspergillus flavus and Aspergillus parasiticus. Now, these are big names big words that you don't need to know, but these basically, they can contaminate foods and cause mold to grow on foods. The foods that are most commonly affected are things like maize, groundnuts, and other grains, especially in warm temperatures and humid conditions. So if you're a person who likes to eat bro, you like to eat corn, you like to eat nuts, that's okay. Nothing wrong with the actual maize or the actual corn. They're actually quite healthy. But the problem is that these aflatoxins can grow on them, or these molds tend to like growing on these maize, especially if there's it's humid conditions. So you just need to be careful that you're not eating moldy corn or moldy nuts. And if there are any molds on any corn or any nuts, then you need to throw it away. I know people who cut away a portion of it and, get rid of it and things like that. It's just safe to throw it away because there are some molds that you cannot see. You might think, oh, this is the green area, I'm just going to cut that chunk and throw it away. But there might be surrounding areas which are very minimal, but you can't see. And the regular consumption of that can pose health risks. So, yeah. Some other recommendation that you can recommend also is to ensure proper drying and storage of the grains and the nuts. Purchase them from reputable sources. So again, if you think about, I've always had this issue with, again, this is more of a UK issue, but issue with sort of African shops in the UK. Sometimes they're really dark and moldy areas, and you can tell, wow, this corn has been here for at least 2 months, but the corn is still being sold. So you just need to be careful where you're purchasing your produce from and make sure that the area is clean. And even if it's not, you need to just check that it's not moldy. The next one, I know I'm going to get a lot of especially from the Ghanaians in the crowd. So Kobe momone is what is usually called in Ghana, but essentially fermented fish or salted fish. Now, we've already spoken about salt several times on this show, so I'm not even going to get into it. But fermented fish products are traditionally delicacies in some African cuisines, but the kind of health risks that they pose is the potential for contamination. So if fermentation processes are unhygienic, there's a risk of bacterial contamination, including something called Clostridium botulinum, which can cause botulinism, which is basically, it's a condition where it's a bacterial infection. You don't want to get it. It can be really difficult to treat at times. So that's all to do with the fermentation process. So that's more on the momone side of things. So fermented foods, not just an example, but fermented fish producers and fermented foods in itself can pose a risk. Again, somebody said to me, don't mention banku, but things like, again, banku, and those are made from fermented goods. Banku in itself is not bad. I just think, again, it's about the fermentation processes. So you need to make sure you know how the fermentation process has been taken, and you need to make sure that it's a clean and hygienic space. I will touch on the salt because it's very important. Excessive salt, as we know, as I always say on this show, is associated with high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease. So the more you cut down on your salt, the better. I know Kobe tastes very, very nice and salt is very, very nice. But again, eating it in moderation is the key. So not over-consuming over-salted foods is the key, okay? So yeah, just keep an eye on that. The fifth one, now we're getting to the end now, so I've only got two more to do. Okay, so this is going to be another thing that a lot of Africans, not just Ghanaians, are going to, probably argue about a lot. But deep fried snacks. Already we know that deep fried food is not really healthy. We know deep fried food are usually associated with things like fast food, so your chips and things like that. In Africa, the most ones that we eat is things like the puff puff, chin chins, mandazi, your chips. They're popular snacks. The reason why they're not considered healthy is, number one, they're high in something called trans fats and sugars, leading to increased risk of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. The second thing is also the oil quality, and this is going to be a running theme within here. So the oil quality, using reused or overheated oil can produce harmful compounds, similar to those found in improperly prepared shito. So the recommendation is that limit the consumption of these deep fried snacks and ensure that they are prepared with fresh oil. So a lot of the time, if you do want to eat it, my mom makes a banging buffet. And I love it because I know what kind of oil she's used and I know it's prepared in hygienic conditions. And again, I'm not eating them every day or every week, it's only a once in a while thing. So just be mindful. Again, some people might say, well, we hardly prepare these foods, so we don't eat it all the time. I know Ghanaian communities, and again, I'm drumming on the Ghanaian communities because that's what I know. But I'm sure other African communities are similar. In Ghanaian communities where there's an event every week, and, there can be weddings, christenings, funerals, you name it, birthday parties. And at every Ghanaian event that you go to, even Nigerian events as well, you're definitely going to have some sort of buffet or some sort of chin-chin or, chips. So you might say, oh, I'm not making these often. But if you think about it, if you're going to even one event a week, that's even too much concern. And it depends on how much you're eating as well. So if you're at one event and you're only having, like I say, a handful of chips, fair enough. But if you're having, bags and bags and bowls of them, then again, you need to check your consumption. So it's just something to keep an eye on. The last but one, again, I was talking about this on the show again. I feel like today's show is just going to be like, Akos, you've said this before, and we've already told you we don't agree with you, but let's go for it anyway. So the excessive use of refined oils, example, palm oil. Palm oil is commonly used as a cooking ingredient, especially in Ghanaian cuisines. It's got the health implications that it's got refined palm oil is high in saturated fats, which can cause something called LDLs, which is basically low density lipoproteins, which is, in another word, is just bad cholesterol. So bad cholesterol levels are bad for your heart and can increase your risk of getting things like cardiovascular disease. We've spoken about stroke before, so these are your risks of things like this. So the recommendation would be to use palm oil in moderation, to consider alternatives like sunflower or olive oil, which have healthier fats. And then the very last one I want to talk about, and I'm almost shaken to bring this up because I know this is like a delicacy of a lot of African countries, but bushmeat. So bushmeat is one that I could talk about for a very long time, and I could probably do a show on bushmeat alone. But I'm going to give a very small summary. And why is bushmeat risky? Well, if it's not obvious, because they can carry many zoonotic diseases like Ebola, like HIV, especially if not well cooked or if it's illegally hunted. So some people who might not know what bushmeat is might be asking, actually, what exactly is bushmeat? So bushmeat is basically wild animals which are hunted for and made into food. So in some cultures, it really depends on which cultures, but you can have things like deers, you can have rabbits, you can have porcupines, different types of meat, basically just wild meat. When many of the emerging infectious diseases originate from wildlife. If you think about, Ebola, which came from infected fruit bats, and if you think about HIV, which came from chimpanzees. So consuming bushmeat basically it crosses that barrier between, there are some infections that usually only exist in animals, which couldn't cross the barrier into human beings. But then consuming bush meat then allows some of these infections to actually cross over into humans, and then it's able to infect human beings. So if you are going to eat bush meat, the most important thing to do is, number one, to make sure it's from a well-known source, so it's not illegally produced, because that in its own means that the meat in itself is not tested, and it's not vouched for. That's the one thing. And the second thing, I mean, I can't even say what I'd recommend in terms of cooking, but I mean, you could cook it well, which can sometimes negate some of these infections, but it's just really risky, because some of these infections, regardless of being cooked, can still remain in the bushmeat. So I think it's just be careful when you're having bushmeat. Buy it from a known vendor, make sure it's cooked in hygienic conditions. And I mean, that's all I can really say about bushmeat. So having said all of that, that brings me to the end of my slide. I know that today a lot of people will say I'm not their friends, and we will have an interesting conversation with the team today. But if you've got any questions, as I say, we'll take a short break now and we'll come back. You can ask me any questions about today's presentation, and or any questions about your medical condition, or somebody's medical condition that you'd like to know, and I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions.
My chef and party planner. We can't get this retirement/birthday shindig go wrong.
Everything is almost ready, but small problem.
Why, what's up?
We are way over budget, Kweku. Everything is almost twice the estimate.
Alibaba, okay? No worries.
So with TAPTAP, I have got a cake and decorations covered from here.
You handle the food.
If any extra expenses comes up, just text me or call me.
I'm off today, so I should be easily reachable.
Hey, Chairman, it is for day.
Say, no be easy. You chairman has time and money.
Allah,
Kweku tap, Kweku do, Kweku that.
our chairman can call you.
Hey, Alande, chairman send them.
TAPTAP send. Papa no.
Welcome to the epitome of luxury living, Whitewall Properties. We are a Ghanaian-owned real estate company that develops comfortable apartments and townhouses for residential and investment purposes. At Whitewall Properties, our vision is clear: to be Ghana's preferred real estate developer. We are driven by a passion to deliver consistent quality in our product and customer service. Our commitment to excellence is unwavering, and our team's dedication to providing an outstanding experience sets us apart. For over a decade, Whitewall has been at the forefront of Ghana's real estate industry, creating spaces that are not only comfortable, functional and located in the heart of Accra, but also stylish and luxurious. Each of our prestigious developments reflect our core values of quality, reliability and customer satisfaction. Choosing Whitewall Properties means choosing a partner who understands your needs and exceeds your expectations. We are proud to contribute to Ghana's real estate landscape, offering homes and investment opportunities that are second to none. We invite you to explore our projects and discover the Whitewall difference. Contact us today to learn more about our development and how we can help you find your perfect home. Visit whitewallproperties.com or call us. Whitewall Properties. Discover true comfort.
I'm smiling because I've already got messages that are making me that are interesting. So I can see I've got hands up, but I'm going to leave Auntie Amma for a while and tackle some of the messages that came through first in the chat. Again, if you want your message to be anonymous, feel free to direct message me. If you've got my number, just message me and I'm more than happy to have a look at it. Also, I know there are people on YouTube and Facebook watching as well, so welcome to the show. Today we talked about African foods to avoid, and this is the Q&A session now. So if you've got any questions about the topic we spoke about today or any health topic that you'd like a real-time doctor to answer, I'm more than happy to help you with that today. So let's crack on with the first question. It says, what's the health implications of cooking the rest of the cut-off portion of a mushy, soft, or discolored tuber of yam? So, I know I spoke about how if something has gone moldy or something has gone sort of mushy, then it's better to just throw the whole thing away because you probably can't see the rest of the mold on it. And that's true for mold. So when it comes to sort of yam and stuff, it's pretty obvious where the bits that are mushy or the bits that are discolored. So I would say with yam, instead of throwing away the whole tuber, you can actually cut the bit off. If you think about even potatoes, so for example, when potatoes start growing the sprouts, wherever the greenness of the potato sprouts are, ideally you shouldn't eat them. So if you can cut away any of that sort of greenness in the potato sprouts, then the potato is safe to consume. The only potato that's not safe to consume is the ones that are like soft and sort of mushy. So again, just throw the whole potato away if it becomes soft. So in a similar way with yam, if the yam is soft and mushy, then again I will throw it away because then that's actually spoiled. But if it's about the brownness and discoloration of it, then you can actually chuck away the bad bits of it, so far as you can see it. So even when it comes to the mold, I always say it's funny because when it comes to bread, sometimes you can get really moldy bread and people tend to cut away the moldy stuff. I'm just really particular with mold because I think that there are, number one, mold sort of spreads. If you've ever seen a bit of fungus on a piece of bread, even if you flip the bread like that, you get like these sediments that sort of spread into the air. So that's why I'm just a bit particular about mold. And I say if anything goes moldy or grainy moldy, then I'm just like throw it away, because even in the process of trying to cut away that mold, you could really easily contaminate the rest of the food. So that's why it's a bit different with mold. And then the same question, the person's also asked, how about cowhide and willy? So I wonder how best to describe what that would be. So it's almost like the lining of the stomach of cow, or another thing that I think Nigerians usually call the cowhide, they call it the towel. I like it very, very much. It's a very great delicacy. But again, it's not without its risks. So cow in itself, and there's been some research about consuming cow in itself, because sometimes cows can contain some diseases. So again, it's about knowing the vendor that you're buying your meats from, trusting the vendor, and obviously making sure that the conditions are hygienic. Also, when it comes to preparing the food, making sure the food is well cooked to sort of negate any of those infectious diseases. So yes, cowhide and willy, they can all come with infections, but they're not on the same scale as sort of your bush meats, because at least cows are almost spoken for in a way that there are regulations against how to kill cows, and how to make sure that they're nice and clean and nice and safe. But the message here is just make sure that you're buying it from a well-known vendor and that it's a hygienic setting. I hope that answers your question. I think I'll take Auntie Emma's questions now. Auntie Emma, I think your hand's up. Can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Kos. I don't know what to say again. I'm speechless, but I'm going to go back to the shito. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I knew you'd come to shito.
Yes. Shito, that's why it's good for people to just know where they are buying it from, and from a good source. I can tell you, because I know how to do shito, and I do very nice shito.
Mm-hmm.
So every time people come to my house and I do my shito, I use fresh oil. Mm-hmm. And what I tend to do, which I would just encourage everyone because of the oil, because we don't want to have any disease or anything, the best thing to do is I tend to just boil everything. And when I know it's really well cooked before I put my oil in, because I don't want to overheat oil. Mm-hmm. So that's how I do my shito. Yep. I don't put all this Maggi and all sorts in. I make sure that there's enough shrimps and then enough the herrings, to do the shito. And I use a lot of garlic, a lot of ginger, and a lot of onions to do the shito. I mean, to do my shito. So I know you said foods that we have to avoid. I personally have issues with avoid. I would say cut down.
I think, yeah. I mean, you know what? I understand.
Cut down is the word.
Yeah, well, you see, yes, I agree. I agree to an extent with what you're both saying. But the reason I use avoid is because, it's almost like when I say avoid salt, right? And there's a train of thought out there that says that you cannot cook without salt. And to an extent, salt is like almost the center of life and culinary. Like, you can't have food without salt. But the reason I say to avoid is because when you say cut down, that is really subjective. For you, what might be cut down for somebody else might actually be, a normal size. So if somebody's eaten, and I know somebody personally who can finish like a whole bottle of shito probably within 2 days, they use it like stew. So if you say to such a person, cut down shito, and they say, okay, instead of using a whole bottle a day, I'm going to use half a bottle a day. For them, that's cutting down on shito. But actually, the harm is still the same. So when I say avoid, that word makes you know that actually this is more serious and I need to stop eating this. So even if you're eating it, you think about, I need to eat it in moderation. So instead of eating half a bottle, you think, okay, maybe 2 spoons are enough, But if you say cut down is really subjective, and cut down for everybody on this show is going to be very, very different. So avoid is just a general word, which makes everybody understand, the gravity of the situation.
Okay, all right. So in another way, I would just say if you are cooking the shito or you are making the shito yourself, and the ingredients and things that you put in is healthy, like you don't overheat the oil, you put the oil in the last, maybe few minutes before it's well done. I think it's healthy enough. I don't eat shito every day. But I love my shito because my favorite is wache, because I don't want to eat too much rice. I prefer the balance. So it's quite difficult when I'm being told.
I understand. Oh, sorry. I understand where you're coming from, but I can't help you justify your shito today. Okay. I cannot say that shito is healthy. What I can say is, yes, if you make it yourself, then it's healthier than perhaps not making it yourself. But the fact still remains that you're still, the way you make shito, you cannot make shito without using really hot oil. You cannot make shito without using really excessive oil. And these 2 things alone makes shito unhealthy, regardless of how healthy you try to make it. So I guess, yes, you can make it healthier if you make it yourself. But if you think about the content of oil that you use in shito, and regardless of how you look at it, the whole sort of backbone of shito is the fact that the ingredients that you use have to be kind of burnt for it to get that whole shito taste, or that, the name shito. If not, then it would just be hot pepper, wouldn't it? It wouldn't really be shito. So even no matter how healthy you try to make shito, it's still going to have an unhealthy component to it. So I cannot
Dr. Akos, the oil preserves the shito. So if if Antilizi is there, because at the moment, I do understand what you're saying, because most of the foods that you listed, I know. I was even waiting for kenke, for you to talk about kenke. Because, kenke raises inflammation markers, that.
So that's why I spoke about fermented goods. And if you remember, I actually mentioned banku. But I didn't say so I talked about the fermented fish and meats and fermented goods, and I said obviously I can't delve into all of it. But if I talk about fermented things, kenke sort of touches on that.
I'll leave the floor for someone, because at the moment I'm just broken-hearted.
Oh, sorry, Auntie. I'm in moderation. Okay,
I don't like
you do the right
I
thing.
don't like salt. I can cook without salt, which I've done for a long time, so I'm used to it. So yeah.
So, it sounds like you're doing all the right things. So, by trying to cut out all the unhealthy aspects of it. So, cooking it yourself and making sure you're not eating it as often. So, I think you're doing all the right things. But, it's just to have in the back of your mind to say this can be a bit unhealthy. So, yeah, we'll move on from that today.
I was also waiting for you to talk about rice.
Again, when I say, for example, things like rice, kinke, banku, those would be the things I would say cut down on, because those are not ones that I want to flag as avoid. The ones I spoke about today were the foods I want you to avoid. So that's the difference. Okay, I'll move on to Suzanne, who's put a note in the chat what says, "Hi, doctor. What are the actual health risks of consuming moldy food?" So I like this question actually, because I think a lot of the time we don't understand why is moldy food bad. There are two things I can think that sort of spring to mind. For one, when food becomes moldy, it just tells you that the food is off. So it's almost like eating food that has expired, or food that's that you shouldn't be consuming. So that's the first thing. The second thing is mold is actually fungus. So if you think about fungus, and a lot of people don't think about fungus in this way, but fungus is on the same level as a bacteria or a virus. So if you think about how we try to avoid bacteria infections, we try so hard to avoid viral infections, why don't we try so hard to avoid fungal infections? Because believe it or not, when you get a fungal infection, a lot of people don't see it as being dangerous, but fungal infections actually make your immune system compromised. So you become something called immunocompromised. And by having a fungal infection, your body is more likely to then get superimposed bacteria and viral infections. So we really, really, really try to avoid getting fungal infections. And essentially, moldy food is fungus. Anything that becomes mold is basically grown fungus. So that is the health risks of consuming moldy food, is basically getting an infection. Then thank you for your question, by the way. Nadina says, what makes shito black? What makes shito black is the fish powder. Yes, it is. I'm not saying that the blackness of the shito is burnt. That's not what I said. What I said is the taste of shito resides in the fact that it has to have highly overheated ingredients, which includes overheated fish powder. So yes, even though it's not the burntness of it that makes it black, but it contributes to it, and it contributes to the shito as well being unhealthy. I know shito, a lot of people are going to not really agree on the shito case, because we've had this before, and that's okay. But my job is to inform you. What you decide to do with that information is entirely up to you. But I need to let you know the truth of the matter. So we need to accept it. And yes, I'm not saying that stop eating shito altogether, but I am saying have it in your back of your mind whenever you go to have, half a jar of shito, and just think to yourself, what are the health risks of eating all of this in one go? Okay. Hello, Thelma. Thanks for joining. I'm glad to see you. Grace is saying, I was of the impression that fermented cornmeal is for gut health. True or false? True and false. So again, this is where it gets a bit difficult. Somebody asks about moldy food and somebody's asking about fermented. So some fermented foods are actually good for you. So if you talk about sort of gut microbiome, and if you think about all these yogurts which say it's got, these good bacteria for your gut and stuff, it's all about how they make it and how they ferment it, because our body has natural bacteria which basically live in our gut, and then they help fight against infections at the same time. They help promote good gut health. So yes, some fermented foods can be good, but again, this is where you need to know it's out with the remit of sort of this show. But knowing the good fermented goods, knowing the contents of the fermented goods is important. So not every fermented fermented product is good for you, because it depends on what bacteria is grown in that fermentation process. So if you think about all the Yakult and all those yogurts out there that promote good bacteria, they all have the type of bacteria that's in it, and is a kind of bacteria that thrives by living in your gut and helping your gut to grow. But having something like fermented fish or fermented, like the kinky or the banku, the type of bacteria that is growing is actually not known. And also, it's not in a controlled environment. So you can have fermented fish and it can have good bacteria in it. But because, for example, I use Kobe, because, not Kobe, I'll use Momani. Because Momani has been there for a long time, maybe it's been stored in the fridge for a long time, or maybe it's been stored in room temperature, other bacteria have used the opportunity to get onto it. So as much as, yes, it has the good bacteria, it's also got bad bacteria in it. And there's no way for you to test and know what type of bacteria that fermented good has. So unless you know the fermentation process and the type of bacteria the fermentation has, it's better for you to avoid the fermented goods. I hope that answers your question. So back to Thelma. Is using coconut oil okay for shito? I'm not sure how to answer this question, because it's not about the type of oil you're using, it's about how you're using the oil. So if you've ever heard of the saying that says, if you use virgin olive oil and you overheat it, then you basically spoil the oil. It's no longer virgin olive oil, and actually the health benefits that you're supposed to get from it then becomes null and void. It's the same thing. So even if you're using something which is a healthy oil, like coconut oil or sunflower oil, or all those other ones, and you're you're trying to, and you overheat it for the purposes of shito, or you're reusing that oil for the purposes of shito, then basically it negates the healthy factor of it. So yes, you can use coconut oil, but it depends on how you're using it. And again, in a way, either way, you're going to have to overheat it anyway for the purposes of the shito. So in a way, it's probably going to negate the healthiness of it. But it might be healthier than your normal shito. So in a way, yes, I guess it'll be a good substitution if you want to really call your shito healthy. Yes, I was actually going to do this. So thanks for coming. I think for some people who came late, I'm just going to share my screen again and quickly go through the types of foods that I mentioned we need to avoid, just so you can all have a good idea of the types of foods. So I hope you can see my screen there, and I'm just sharing it again. So the first food I said to avoid was shito, which is basically sort of it's mainly made in Ghana. It's a black sauce which is made from overheating oil, or sometimes using old reused oil. So number one reason to avoid it, because overheating oil can cause carcinogens, which are cancer-causing agents. So you want to avoid that. The next one was smoked or charred meat. So again, that's like a barbecue. So not just this is not just African, pretty much anywhere else in the world. Whenever you barbecue foods, you end up getting like these black bits here, these charred bits here, and essentially those bits, burnt bits, also have cancer-producing agents called carcinogens, and you really want to avoid eating such food. Then I talked about aflatoxin. So aflatoxin itself is not a food, it's just the mold. So these green bits and these white bits that are usually found on things like maize and granites. So you want to avoid eating any food that has become moldy, because the whole purpose of the mold is to tell you that the food is out of date, and also the mold is a type of infection. You can end up getting fungal infections from it. Fermented fishes or fermented foods. So I was just speaking about this, but essentially, Kobe is something which is an over-salted fish, which can predispose you to getting things like high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease. Fermented fishes can also predispose you to infections, so important to keep away from that. Deep fried snacks, again, using oil, overheating oil. Oils have trans fats, which can contribute to things like obesity, type 2 diabetes. You want to avoid things like that. We talked about refined oils, and I'm using palm oil as an example. So you want to stay away from refined oils, or at least cut down how many times you're using them, because again, they have things called that like trans fats, and they can predispose you to obesity, diabetes, heart disease like stroke and things like that. And the very last one was things like bushmeat. And again, these can predispose you to mainly infections, but again, I can talk so much about this. So these are some of the things. I hope that that's helped you in for those who joined late and catching up with what we've been speaking about so far. Again, as I say, thank you for coming to the show. Thank you, TAPTAP Send No T Media, for sponsoring the show. I want to encourage everybody to ask questions, of course, about what we've spoken about today, but also if you have questions, other health questions that you're curious about, or if you've seen something in the news, or, any health questions that you want to ask a real life doctor about, that's what I'm here for today. So throw your questions at me. If I don't know the answer, I will say, I'll get back to you next week. I'm not going to lie to you. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have. And thank you all for coming on to the show. So somebody said, how about palm kernel oil? Again, this is a good oil, actually, and I know it's really good to use, but like I say, with every oil, it depends on how you're using it. So in your normal daily cooking, it's fine, but if you're overheating it, or if you're overusing it, or if you're reusing it several times, and again, it makes it unhealthy. So there are really healthy oils out there, like I said, virgin oil, olive oil, coconut oil, kernel oils, and sort of those natural oils are really good, but it depends on how you're using them. So just be mindful on how you use these oils. And if you think about what I said today, I talked about refined oils. So the naturally forming oils are absolutely fine, but it's about the refinement of them that makes them the problem. I'm mindful of the time as well. So I'm getting a lot of people don't want to talk on the show today. Everybody's sending messages in the chat, which is fine, but you're more than happy and you're more than welcome to raise your hand and I'll call you, and you can also give a comment or say something if you want to. I've got another one here which says, Dr. Akos, can you please mention any Ghanaian or African foods that are good and healthy? Thank you. That is for another show. I plan to go through that as well. I don't want to go through that right now because the purpose of today's show is to talk about the foods that we need to avoid. But there's certainly so many foods in Africa that are very, very good and very, very healthy, actually. And the one actually springs on top of my head even just now, but I'm not going to mention it now. I'll leave that for another show, perhaps next week or sometime in the month. So stay tuned and watch the space. I beg your pardon. Sorry, that is me. Okay. I'll take one last question from the chat and then I'll let Auntie Emma talk, and then I might just round up and wrap the show for today. So Dinah says, please, can regular eating of avocado cause bad cholesterol? So yes and no. The real answer to that question is no, because avocado has good cholesterol in it. So it cannot cause bad cholesterol in a way. But can it increase your cholesterol level in your body? Yes, it can. So no matter how much, you've got your HDL, which is your good cholesterol, and you've got your LDL, which is your bad cholesterol. So avocado in itself cannot increase your bad cholesterol because it has good cholesterol, but it can still increase your good cholesterol, which can still be a bad thing. So having too much cholesterol in the body can predispose you to things like fatty plaques being formed in your heart, in your brain, in your blood vessels, which can lead to things like high blood pressure. It can lead to strokes. It can lead to heart attacks. So yes, eating avocado is actually healthy, but eating too much of cholesterol in itself is the same as eating too much egg yolk. So we know egg yolk has also got good cholesterol in it, but if you're eating too much of that, and again, I know I'm touching on something that Ghanaians love so much, but yes, no, eating too much good cholesterol can be a bad thing. Oh, yes. Sorry. Thank you, Letty, for drawing my attention to it. Someone asked about dawa dawa. And I did not ignore that question. I was actually going to ask the person, can you please tell me what dawa dawa is? Because I'm not sure I know what it is. So I'm going to wait for you to come back to me with that. And I'm going to ask Auntie Amma to ask her question. And then we'll come back to the dawa dawa question.
Dr. Akos, I just want to find out, because I've seen a lot of Africans. They often say olive oil is good for cooking. But from what I know, olive oil is good for garnishing foods. And I used to use olive oil, and then I stopped, because when I got to know the truth, I stopped using it, and I use rapeseed oil I use coconut oil or rapeseed oil. Can you throw more light on that? Number one. Number two, I was just waiting for you to talk about Maggi. Things to avoid.
We know how I feel about Maggie on this show. You know very much how I feel about Maggie on this show. I think I've spoken about it so many times. It's unbelievable, but it's avoid for, for me. I always say this, and I'll come back to your first question. This is because the Maggie question has really caught my attention. So, Maggie, again, for like the umpteenth time, is flavored salt. It is basically just salt with flavor. We know how I feel about salt on this show. Avoid. Thank you, Alexa. Avoid. So how I feel about Maggie and the truth about Maggie, not just Maggie. I'm not trying to say avoid Maggie and eat all the rest. Any flavored cubes, so your Knorr, your Oxo, whatever, they're all just flavored salt. The reason we as doctors don't like salt is because salt is like the number one cause of high blood pressure. High blood pressure is a leading cause of heart disease. And again, it can lead to stroke. So a lot of the time, again, I've said this on the show several times, people, and again, West African people will say, I don't eat salt. But if you ask them, do you use any flavored cubes, Maggie cube, Knorr, Oxo, they would say, oh yes, I use it.
Please, what about all-purpose seasoning?
All-purpose seasoning is still the same because the salt content is extremely high. Now, I would rather you use the different flavoring. So use your garlic, use your ginger, use your onion, use them separately. But whenever you get this all-purpose and it's full of salt. If you've got all-purpose with you right now, just go to the back of it and look at the sodium content. It's ridiculous. So you really want to avoid that much sodium because it's just going to give you high blood pressure. So please avoid Maggie. Now I've forgotten the other question. Olive oil. Yes, olive oil is a good alternative for cooking. Again, on low heat. So I know you talked about using it for garnishing and things. Olive oil loses its healthiness when it's used on high heat. So if you're deep frying stuff and it doesn't, and I've heard people say, I'm deep frying that cocoa with olive oil, it really doesn't make a difference because as soon as you put high heat on olive oil, you sort of ruin the goodness of it. You can use olive oil to cook. You can use it in your stew. You can use it, in your rice, anguamo, and things like that. That's low heat, nothing wrong with that. But as soon as it touches high heat, it kind of defeats the purpose. So yes, olive oil is a healthier alternative. The thing about all oils is all oils have fats in them and they have trans fats. And again, like I said, depending on how you use them. So all these naturally occurring oils, the good oils, they can become bad oils or they can become bad for your health if you use them in an inappropriate way. So just use them in an appropriate way. Avoid high heats. A lot of things hate high heats anyway. And that's the way to have it. So I hope I've answered your question, Auntie Amma.
Thank you, Dr. Akos.
Yeah, you're welcome. Dinah, did you want to add something to it?
Yes, I had wanted to ask that is preparing our jollof rice sauce not being using high heat? Because I think we use high heat in preparing our jollof rice sauces.
Not necessarily. Again, I guess it depends on how you're preparing it, but not necessarily. I mean, I don't tend to cook jollof rice on high heat, and I know people who cook. And again, I suppose it depends on the quantities in which you're cooking. But I think if you're if you're cooking like your normal, for me, it's a 3-person family,
like big pot to feed about 100 people.
And that's why we often say, I remember when I was a kid, I always used to ask my mum, and I always used to say, why is it that the same jollof rice that I eat at home, if I suddenly eat it in a restaurant, everybody's saying it's unhealthy, And I guess these are some of the factors as well, because actually your jollof rice is not unhealthy, aside from maybe the carbohydrate factor and things, which we'll come to another session. But if you're eating it, that's why they call it fast food, because I suspect it's about how it's made. So like Diana, you have a really good point about, obviously, if you're cooking for big gatherings or catered food, they're often known as bad food, because I guess is how they're made and how they're prepared. So if you're cooking for your own family, you're cooking your jollof rice and it's on low heat, again, nothing wrong with that. But if it's, it's high heat, big crowds, and all the preparation is important as well when it comes to food. So food is not just unhealthy based on the products that I use, but also the way in which the food is cooked and the way that the ingredients are handled and how they're produced. I mean, it goes straight from harvesting, production to consumption is the whole chain. So everything can be healthy up until the cooking aspect. Everything can be unhealthy. So even if you've used really unhealthy products, but you've cooked it in the best way possible, they're still unhealthy if they've been harvested in the wrong way, produced in the wrong way, markets shipped in the wrong way. So that's why I talked about knowing the vendors that you're using, making sure you're buying your produce from hygienic, clean, trusted vendors. And these are, because it's all part of it. It's not just a single picture that we're looking at. We're looking at the full picture. Susan, I'm gonna have to ask you to elaborate on MSG. I'm not sure if we're thinking the same thing, but please elaborate on what you mean by MSG. I'm going to take the Dawa Dawa question and I'll come back to Susan. And I think Susan might be my last question for today. So Grace is saying Dawa Dawa is equivalent to momone oke, which is popularly used in the northern region part of Ghana. So I suspect, well, you've pretty much answered my question then, in a way. So if it's the same as momone, then in a way I suspect that I'm not familiar with the food, so I can't say for real that it's good or bad. But if it's a meat and if it's a fermented fish, then it has its health risks the same as momone will have the health risks. So that would be my answer to that question. I can't give you an exact yes or no because I'm not familiar with it. I'm sorry. And Susan's asked a question about, does Maggi contain MSG and what's the risk of MSG? I'm not sure I understand what MSG is. So I was going to get Susan to come back and explain what MSG. Susan, are you there?
Yeah. So MSG is monosodium glutamate, which is usually found in those cubes and stuff. And I remember back in the days, people said Maggi contained a lot of MSG. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that is why people should stop using it or avoid using it completely. So I'm asking, does it, apart from the salt that you mentioned, which is made up in Maggi, does it have MSG as well?
Again, I know that there's been conversations about this, and that's what I was asking you. Is it the same MSG that I'm thinking? Because there's another MSG as well, which is different from sort of the ones found.
The same one. And some people are saying, actually, MSG is not as harmful as salt. I don't know. Yeah, I've had this new debate, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's an ongoing debate. And I think that what the trouble with this is that when it comes to the MSG, I think there's even been some content out there which has said that Maggi does not contain MSG, and there've been some argument as to whether or not Maggi truly contains it. So I think the argument there is still an ongoing argument. If it does contain MSG is toxic to the body, so it's definitely something that we should not consume. So that gives us another reason why we shouldn't consume Maggi. But from my side as a medical professional, my main concern with the Maggi is the salt. So obviously MSG is another question altogether, and it's an ongoing debate. Anything that contains MSG should not be consumed because MSG is a toxin which is not good for the human body. But even if we remove MSG from Maggi cube, the remaining factor is that it is salt. And we need to avoid salt at all costs. If you see salt, you need to run. So that's sort of my argument for not eating any of the Maggi cubes or any flavored cubes or anything like that. And that would be my main reason for saying to you, because I cannot confirm the MSG argument. It's still ongoing. Okay. Right. Thank you all so much for staying till the end. And really making this conversation really interesting. Shout out to everybody who's always here. I see Esther, I see C, I see Amma, Liz was here, Pearl, so many people who are here, Josephine, Suzanne. Thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate you. Next week, we're going to have the same. Obviously, every Wednesday, we have the health talk. So make sure that you're tuning in 8 o'clock sharp, 8 to 9. Tomorrow, Thursday, there's a time with TAPTAP Send again at 8 o'clock, same Zoom link. So make sure to tune in. And then on Friday, there's Ask the Lawyer. They can ask the lawyer any immigration question you have whatsoever. A bit like today's show, but instead of health, it's the legal aspect of it. So TAPTAP Send has a lot of shows that they bring to you from Wednesday to Thursday. So please do tune in if you have some time. Again, I'd like to thank OT Media and TAPTAP Send for always sponsoring this show. It's been a pleasure working with all of you. My co-hosts, Dr. Kojo and Lady Abena, could not make it today, unfortunately, due to work restraints, but they send their greetings and they hope to see you next week. I myself will be working next week, so I won't be here, but they will be here and we'll have a guest speaker for you as well. So thank you all once again for being here. Hope to see you next week and have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Me did young antechwa and maybe I'm discovered for you akuma busuya for Ghana no. Me use TAPTAP Send. TAPTAP Send. No fee mobile money transfer. Eye easy, eye convenient, eye fast, and sounds so free. Won't you she? Me discover ye mapim. TAPTAP Send. NTN also download the TAPTAP Send app no. Ewa mobile phone so free. Na first kakomu busuya for Ghana for na. TAPTAP Send. Papa no.
Hello, this is Lawyer Wisdom of Wismart Solicitors. Join me this and every Friday on OT TV from 8 to 9 p.m. for all your UK immigration matters. I hope to see you there. Thank you.